Hello, Shalom, boys in grade 11. I'm now going to record Navi, Shir, and Shir Hashirim. We're up to Perik Bet, Pasuk Tet, in Shir Hashirim. The last Pasuk we learned in Perik Bet, Pasuk Chet, was Kol Dodi Hine Zeba, the voice of my beloved is coming, Medaleg Alehorim, leaping over the mountains, and Mekapetz, and jumping Alagvod on the hills. Rashi explained that this jumping on the mountains and leaping over the hills referred to Hashem hurrying to take us out of Mitzrayim. We might have had to stay there for 400 years, but instead Hashem calculated 190 years from when Yitzchak was born until Yaakov Avinu came to Mitzrayim. As I explained, from when Yitzchak was born until he had Yaakov was 60 years, and from when Yaakov was born until he came to Mitzrayim was 130 years. Together is 190. Hashem chishav es haketz, Hashem calculated the kates, the end, the kuf tzadik, the 190 years. He included them in the Galut. He included them in what Hashem said to Avram Avinu, Ger yia zaracha be'eretz lo lahem, your children will be strangers in a land which is not theirs. And Yitzchak and Yaakov lived in a land which was not theirs, in Canaan. So that was included. And 210 years after Yaakov arrived in Mitzrayim, Hashem took the Jews out of Egypt. I had explained last time that this indicates that God took us out of Egypt not merely because He had promised Avraham that He would take us out, because if it was merely paying a debt or just honoring an obligation, as I explained, people who pay debts pay usually the last time possible. You try to hold the money as long as you can, and even when you pay a debt, you put it in an envelope, you mail it in a mailbox, or you do it online. But when Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, as we will see soon, Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim in spring. It's a wonderful month. Hashem did all kinds of miracles for us. Hashem paved the way for us and made the Exodus a beautiful Exodus. The way a person would wrap a gift and put nice wrapping paper on it and tie it with a bow. Hashem took us out, giving us the Exodus as a gift. And in fact, He took us out 190 years early. If it's merely paying a debt, nobody pays a debt early. But if it's to give a gift, sometimes, as I explained to you, if a parent might buy a birthday gift for a child and then can't control themselves, and even before the birthday came, they say to the child, I know you really like this, I'll give it to you even earlier. So Hashem showed His love to the Bnei Yisrael by giving them the gift of the Exodus earlier. Pasuk Tes. Dome Dodi L'Tzvi, my beloved is like a deer, Oila Ofer Ha'ayolim, or a young ayal, a young hind. Hine ze oimed achar kosleinu. He, God, was standing behind the wall, Mashgiach min hachalonos, watching from the windows, Meitzitz, peering min hacharakim, from the cracks. I don't know if you have Sforim with you, so I'm just going to read the pasuk again, tell you what Rashi says, and then explain. Again, Dom medodi l'tzvi ola ofer hayolim. My beloved is like a deer or a young hind running with speed. Hine ze oimed achar kosleinu. He was standing behind our wall. Mashgiach min hachalonos, meitzitz min hachrakim, watching from the windows and peering from the cracks. Rashi says the Jewish people felt that, God forbid, we're going to be here forever. We were afraid that perhaps, who knows, maybe God has abandoned us. But then I realized when He hurried and He took us out, that He was always standing behind the wall. He was always watching from the windows, and He was always peering through the cracks. He never stopped watching over us. He never stopped caring. It brings to mind a conversation I once had with Eli Wiesel. There is a Gemara in Gittin. The Gemara says that when Titus entered the Mikdash, he stuck his sword into the paraychas and blood came pouring from it, and he thought that perhaps he had killed the Almighty. He took utensils from the Mikdash and wrapped it in the parochas and carried it back to Rome. And the Gemara says, Mi kamocha ba'elam Hashem, who is like you amongst the strong ones, God? God, you're very strong. Shata shameya, chirufa, v'gedufa, shaloisa rasha. You listen to that wicked man cursing and swearing, and vata shaisek, and you're silent. And the Gemara learns the word elim as if it would be ilmim, mute. God, you remain mute while he was defiling your Mikdash. And by the way, that's also elim. To be mute is a sign sometimes of strength. A person has the strength to hold back and not to respond. Mi kamocha, who is like you, God, ba'elim, of the strong ones, ba'ilmim, and you are mute. If so, if that's the meaning of the pasuk, then this pasuk is a pasuk that belongs during the time of destruction, during the time of tragedy, where tragedies are happening, destruction is happening, and God is strong and withholds his response, and God is mute. But we know that the pasuk Mi kamocha ba'elam Hashem is written in the Shir, in Bishalach, when the Jews went out of Mitzrayim and they're singing to Hashem for their redemption. So why is the pasuk a pasuk which is said during redemption, when according to the Gemara it's a pasuk which illustrates God's strength during destruction? And I said to him, I think the answer is that when there's destruction going on, there is, God forbid, an impression or an illusion that God has blinked or God has looked away and God doesn't care. Because take a look at what's happening. How can there be? How could it be? But it's only when the redemption comes, and the redemption is so beautiful, and God demonstrates his love to us when he redeems us, that I realize it's impossible that somebody who loves us so much could have ever forgotten us, could have ever looked away, could have ever blinked. God has a reason why everything happens. And that's why the pasuk, and that's why Mi kamocha ba'elam Hashem, when we came out of Egypt and we sang the Shira, we said when we were there for 210 years, we were afraid that maybe we had been forgotten. But now that we see the love that you have for us when you took us out, we realize Mi kamocha ba'elam Hashem. God, it must have been a great feat of strength for you to control yourself and not respond when Egypt was happening, and you and only you knew why that needed to happen. Mi kamocha ba'elam Hashem. This was not the God who forgot. Hine lo yanum v'lo yishan sham Yisrael. God does not sleep, God does not slumber, but for some reason you were there. You were there and you felt that's what had to be. But I only realized that only when I saw the Gula, only when I saw the beauty of your love when you saved us. So here too, the pasuk says, Doma dodi l'tzvi alo for ayolim. My beloved is like a deer, like a young hind. Look how he runs. Look how he hurries to bring me out as soon as possible. Look how he rushes to give me freedom as a gift. So now I realize that he must have been Aymed Achar Kasleinu. Even during the time of the exile, he must have been standing behind the wall, Mashgiach min achaloinos meitzitz min achrakim, looking through the windows and peering through the cracks. These words have another meaning. Sometimes people can only see what's happening right now. They don't see the greater context. They don't see the big picture. When somebody's mashgiach min achaloinos from the windows of heaven, when somebody's very, very high, you get to see a very big picture. And when God was looking at us, God understood what had to happen. And God saw the big picture, mashgiach min achaloinos, watching from the windows. But even though God watches from the windows and sees the big picture, there is no little point of manusha that God does not notice. At the same time, His mates, it's peering min acharakim through the cracks. God knows the big picture and God knows every small picture. And when He took us out, I realized that this was the God of love who had been there all the time, watching us and watching over us, watching from high above where He saw everything that was going on, and peering through the cracks and seeing each and everything that happened. Next pasuk, Anna Dodi Vamarli, and then my beloved spoke up and said to me, Kumilach, arise, Rayasi, my friend, Yafasi, my beautiful, Ulachilach, and it's time for you to go. Again, Anna Dodi, my beloved, spoke up, Vamarli, and said to me, Kumilach, arise, Rayasi, my friend, my beloved, Yafasi, my beautiful, Ulachilach, and it's time to go. If you remember, when we learned Megillat Ruth, and Naomi had lost her husband, and she had lost her two sons, and she's in Moab, and it says Vatokam Naomi, and Naomi got up, and she returned from the fields of Moab to Israel. We discussed at the time why it says she got up. What does it have to say? She got up. It should simply say, and Naomi returned from the fields of Moab. I gave you the example of a boxer who was battered and beaten, and he's down on the canvas, and he's lost so many times, and he's lost so much, and all of a sudden he's left with a challenge. Do I just pull the cover over my head? Do I just give up and I lie there? Or do I reach deep inside myself and I rise and I say that I shall not fall again? And Vatokam Naomi decided that even though she had lost her husband and she had lost her children and she's alone in Moab and she had lost her wealth and she had nothing but Vatokam, she felt she needed to rise. She's getting off the ground, she's standing on her 2 feet, she's walking back to Israel, and she's not going down again. And here too, God says, Ana Dodi, my beloved, spoke up and said to me, Kumilach, get up. You've been in Egypt for 210 years, you've been a slave, you've been treated as a slave, you've looked at yourself as a slave. But Kumilach, it's a time to get up off the canvas, it's a time to rise. Kumi, arise, Kumilach. But Yafasi, my beautiful. Here comes a very deep point. God said to the Jewish people, Yafasi, I want you to know you are my beautiful. What is beautiful? What is the definition of beautiful? Many people have different ideas of what is beautiful. I remember a very dear person, his name was Bob Ammond. And Bob Ammond used to run Mishnayos programs in our neighborhood here. He passed away, but I remember him, he worked on Shabanel. And he used to tell me that he would love, when he drove to work, he would drive through the side streets of Outremont in the morning, just watching the school buses pick up the children, taking them to school, taking them to learn. And at night, he particularly went back again through the side streets of Outremont to watch again how the buses would unload the children coming back from school. It was such a beautiful sight, he wanted to see that. And I remember before there used to be an annual Siyum Mishnayos. He would walk into the Beis Medrash and he would see kids that were cramming and learning Mishnayos, practicing and preparing for the Siyum. And he would drink it up. He would say, there's nothing more beautiful in the world. Different people in the world have different visions of beauty. Many years ago, I remember, I think it was summer vacation, and I walked in the school and I walked behind the Beis Medrash and looked through the window, and there were 2 high school boys during the summer, middle of the day, middle of nowhere, sitting and learning B'chabrusa. And my eyes took a snapshot. And I said, this is beautiful. This is so beautiful. 2 boys, during vacation, middle of the day, there is no school, but they're sitting and learning. There are many illustrations of what's considered beautiful. There's a very well-known, I may have said it in class often, there was I think it was Preshburg, where the Chassam Sofer was the Rav, and they only had one esrog on Sukkos, and so everybody stood on line to make a bracha on the esrog, and there were hundreds of people. By the end of the day, that yellow esrog had turned brown, and somebody asked the Chassam Sofer, can you still make a bracha on it, because it's no longer hador, it's no longer beautiful, it's lost its golden shine, it's brown with use. And the Chassam Sofer says, there can be no more beautiful esrog than an esrog that people stood on line and waited to make a bracha on. So many brachas were said on this esrog. So many people waited, and so many people with love said Asher Kedeshanu b'mitzvaysa v'tzivanu al netilas lulav, and they said it while holding this esrog. There's nothing more beautiful than that. God told the Jewish people, I am God. I'm taking you out of Egypt. I'm the creator of the world. And I want you to know that no matter how many times the Egyptians said to you, dirty Jew, no matter how much it says in Parshas Shemos, Vayakutsu mipnei b'nei Yisrael, that the Egyptians looked at the Jews Vayakutsu as if the Jews were kotzim, as if the Jews were thorns. My children, you are no thorns, you are roses. My children, you're beautiful. You are Yafasi, you are my beautiful. There are others who have different ideas of what's beautiful, and others have different ideas of what's ugly. I'm telling you my idea. In my eyes, you are beautiful. And that's important to know. It's important to know Moshe Rabbeinu was somebody who could not speak well. yet he became the greatest speaker of Klal Yisrael, because it wasn't his delivery and it wasn't his stature and it was just his content. Content, what's inside is what counts, not the packaging but the content, not the style but the substance. And therefore, you Jews, you are people of substance. You are descendants genetically and spiritually from Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov. So arise, Yafasi, you are my beautiful. I could go on and on. There's a Gemara in Psochim that on Erev Pesach, when all the people brought their Korbanos Pesach, the Kohanim were ankle deep in blood. And the Gemara says it was beautiful. It was beautiful how they were ankle deep in blood of the Korbanos. Somebody might say it's disgusting to be ankle deep in blood. But it depends how you look at it. If a mother has a child who's a brain surgeon, and you imagine that he just performed an 18-hour first in history brain transplant, and he comes out of the operating room and his white coat is soiled with blood, but he just performed a brain transplant, the first in history. She would not say, "Yuck, look at the blood." She would say, "That's my son. My son just performed the first brain transplant in history." Here also, when you see blood, what do you see? If you see simply grime and not clean, you don't have good eyes. Because every person who brought a Korban Pesach was there in the Azara, Erev Pesach, celebrating Yetzias Mitzrayim, celebrating the Korban Pesach, remembering how we came out of Egypt and with confidence we slaughtered a Korban Pesach in Mitzrayim. And every single Jew who brought a Korban Pesach did it with that feeling of identity, of being a Jew, and being a Jew, a descendant of those who were Yotzim Mitzrayim. And all that now gathered, all this was blood on the floor. What did you see? If all you saw was blood, then you didn't have good eyes. If you saw this was the inspiration of so many Jews who brought and identified with Yetzias Mitzrayim, then you saw the beauty of a Kayan standing ankle deep in blood. The next pasuk is Kihine Hastav Avar. God says the winter has passed. Hageshem Cholav Halachlo, and the rain is gone. Rashi says the winter is the winter of the 400 years of Golus, from when Yitzchak was born, and the rain, even the harsh part of the 400 years, the last 86 years of the time in Egypt was the bitterest time. That's when Miriam was born. Miriam was 86 when they left Egypt, and Miriam was named Miriam because of Mar, because that's when the ultimate bitterness began. But it's compared to a winter, it's compared to a rain, and it's fascinating why. Because we in Montreal really can appreciate this. When winter comes, unless you're a skier or somebody who loves to skate, generally winter is a hardship. There's snow, there's sleet, there's cold, you need extra garments, and it's so bothersome and troublesome. That's what winter looks like, and that's what rain looks like, and for us that's what snow looks like. It's stuff to clean off your car and to shovel off your driveway. But nevertheless, those who have a deeper look understand that it's that rain and it's that snow that actually gives the water to a chance to seep into the ground, to seep into the roots, to make the plants grow, to make the trees grow. It really brings out life. The Gemara says that a day when it rains is even greater than Tchiyat HaMesim. It's a day like it's a day of mercy. God mercifully is giving rain to the world to make things grow and to make life come to life. So therefore, what seems to be really troublesome and bothersome, really behind it all, is really life-giving. To us, it looked like the period of Mitzrayim, the harshness of Mitzrayim, the 210 years of Mitzrayim, was really a negative. But as we've learned, those who learned Daf Yomi recently know that you make a bracha when something good happens, and you also make a bracha when something bad happens. God knows what the purpose is, even when something bad happens. And just like the winter can be something which we look at as something bad or uncomfortable, inconvenient, yet there's good that comes from it. In the same way, Mitzrayim, Golus, was considered an introduction, a foundation for our Gula. In the Torah, Mitzrayim is called a Kur HaBarzel. A Kur is a crucible. A crucible is a utensil where you smelt precious metals, and you take the dross, the other parts of metal that are not the gold or not the silver, and you separate them. And Mitzrayim was our Kura Barzel. It was our crucible. At another time, when we'll learn Haggadah Shel Pesach, I'll explain a little bit what that meant. But therefore, when Hashem said to the Bnei Yisrael, it's time to leave, and I want you to know, you're leaving Mitzrayim, the winter is over, the rain has passed. Look at the last 210 years as a winter and as a rain, as a period of time that helped prepare for the Geula. Pasuk Yud Beis, Hanitzanim niru ba'aretz, the sprouts are seen in the land. Eis hazomir higia, the time of song has come. V'kol hator nishma bi'artzeinu, the sound of the turtle dove can be heard in our land. Simply speaking, he's describing, as I said before, when God took us out of Egypt, it was a gift. And since it was a gift, Hashem took us out. Maitzi Asirim, he took out the prisoners, Bakaisharos, in a month which is very kosher. It's a very pretty month. It's a very nice month to go out in Nisan. It no longer has the cold of winter, nor does it have the heat of summer. All it has is spring. It's getting warmer, and there's an air of promise in the air. There are buds that are budding, the birds are singing, and the world is coming to life, and the Jewish people are coming to life. And God particularly picked that time of the year to take us out of Mitzrayim in order to let us awaken together with the awakening of creation. That's how Hashem wanted to inspire us with Yetzias Mitzrayim. V'kol hator nishma b'artzeinu is a subtle hint that the same way that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim, those sounds will be heard b'artzeinu, because at that time we weren't b'artzeinu. At that time we were still leaving Egypt. But the same way the Geula will come, and the same sounds of freedom, and the same sounds of exodus will be heard b'artzeinu, in our land. Pasuk Yud Gimel, Hata'ena chanta fageha, the fig tree has started to give out its fruit. V'agefanim smadar, and the vines give out their smother, also their baby grapes that are starting. Nasnu reach, their aroma can be smelled. Kumi lach rayasi, arise, arise, my beloved, yafasi, my beautiful, ulechilach, and it's time for you to get going. There's an amazing Rashi. Rashi says, V'agefanim smadar, the vines have started to give out their small fruit. Rashi says, Kishanofel haperach, when the blossom falls off, V'ha'anovim muvdalin ze mizeh, and you start seeing the grapes one from another. V'nikorim kol anovel atzma, and every grape can be seen on its own. Kriya smother, that's called smother. What did Rashi want? Rashi is giving us a lesson in botany as to exactly what the word smother is. The blossom has fallen off, and the grapes have become separated, and each grape can be seen on its own. Perhaps Rashi is saying something very deep. Sometimes people refer to a group of students as a bunch of kids, but it's not a complimentary term, a bunch. Let me explain. When people have no respect for things, then they say it all looks alike. Let's say if people are racists, so they'll say, oh, all black people look alike to me. It's a very racist statement, because they're not a bunch of blacks. Every person, every black person is a different person. Everyone has his personality. Everybody has his life. Everybody has his experience. Each one is a unique character on his own. I remember when I was in business, and I had a buyer who was not a fine person, came into the showroom, and he asked me about a certain item and asked me how much it was, and I gave him a price. And foolishly he said, and everything here is that price? What a foolish statement. Each item that was there was different than the other. How could they all be the same price? He knew it wasn't. He was just acting the fool. But when there is no real difference between one and another, and it makes no difference, and you don't care, oh, just imagine somebody's going to go to a biology class, a science class, look under a microscope, and say, they all look alike. It's not alike. Nothing is alike. You know, the element table, nothing is alike. And when you take a look at molecules, and you look at atoms, nothing is alike. Everything is different. And if you have an appreciation for things, you understand and appreciate the differences. When the Jews were in Egypt, they were, excuse the expression, God forbid, a bunch of slaves. It was called human resources. How many legs and how many arms and how many noses. This one had 10,000 slaves, this one had 5,000 slaves, but it didn't matter. It was just a bunch of slaves. When God took us out of Egypt, all of a sudden He gave us a self-appreciation. You know, each one of you is important. It's like, that's what Rashi means. You were like grapes. When the grapes start to become fruit, and all of a sudden you notice that each grape is a grape on its own, and each grape is separate from the other, and each one can be identified from the other. That's what God was saying to us. Kumilach rayasi yafasi elchilach. I appreciate each and every one of you, and every one of you needs to understand your own qualities, your own values. You are a world to your own, and therefore, that's what we got when we came out of Mitzrayim. We got a sense of self-value, a sense of appreciation of ourselves. So Atayna Chanta Fageha, yeah, the fig tree is starting to give out its unripe figs, but slowly, Vagifanim Smadar, and the vines are starting to give out the little grapes. And Nas Nureach, the aroma is coming from them. And Kumilach, again, the pasuk says, arise. Why does he say arise? It is interesting that we read it Kumi Lach, but it's written Kumi Lechi with an extra yud. What's the extra yud? Because this is the second time God said it's time for you to rise. Because your rise is two kinds of rise. The first rise is a physical rise. The rise from being a slave to being a free man. That is an expression of rising. The other is to rise from a physical person to a spiritual person. I don't merely want you to be a free nation of free people. I want you to be a holy nation of holy people. The first rise is a physical rise, and the second rise, Yud, Rashi says, is for the Aseres HaDibros. Children, in 49 days, after Yetzias Mitzrayim, there's a Yud, there's 10 commandments coming, and these 10 commandments are the basis for all Tariq mitzvahs, and that will be your real rise, your rise to become a holy nation. Pasuk Yudalet, Yainosi bechagve hasela. My dove was in a cleft in the rock, B'seiser hamadrega, hiding behind the stairs. Harinias mar'ayech, show me what you look like. Hashmiinias kailech, let me hear your voice. Ki kailech orev, your voice is sweet, umarech nove, and your look is beautiful. Rashi says it's referring to when the Jews came out of Egypt, and all of a sudden they're at the sea, and they're stuck on four sides. On two sides is the desert, the Egyptians are coming at them, and the Yam is behind them, and there is nowhere to go. And all of a sudden it says, Vanitzak, we cried out, Vayitzaku b'nei Yisrael al Hashem, the b'nei Yisrael cried out at Hashem. Sometimes, God forbid, when a person is even older, a person's mind is weak, and a person is suffering very much, and all of a sudden from his subconscious he calls out Mami, even though his mother is long gone and he's an old man already, or an old woman, and she calls out Mami, because deep down inside you know the one who is responsible for you having come into the world, and the one who gave you comfort when you came into the world, and the one who raised you, and therefore when the pressure is on and the times are really hard, you call out to the one that you know is your foundation and your source. And when the Jews felt that this was the end, they're coming to the last line in their history, they're standing at the Yam, they're going to be annihilated by Yitzaku b'nei Yisrael al Hashem. Nothing mattered anymore, there's nowhere to turn, there's nowhere to go. So God says, you should know, that's when I see what you really believe. It's called that primal scream, that primal call out to the one you really, the one you really believe in. Ana Hashem Hashiana. That's what God says. Hareini. Hareinias marayich. Show me what you look like. Hashmiinias kailech. Let me hear your voice. Your voice is so sweet, and your look is so beautiful.